Kling 2.0 is here and it's taking social media over by storm. But the big question is, how does it stack up against other AI video tools? Google Gemini now allows you to generate video clips using VO2 directly on their platform. And there's a brand new VFX tool that looks like it could change compositing forever. This is your AI film news of the week. And before we get going, I want to give a special shout out to the Curious Refuge communities in Barcelona and New York City. We hosted meetups in those cities this last week. We hope you had an amazing time at the event, and we would love to do more soon. All right, let's get to the news. So the big news that, of course, you need to know about is the release of Kling 2.0. So Kling was already one of our favorite AI video generators leading up to this point, and with this new announcement, it truly is one of the best in the industry. Now, from Kling's announcement page, they say that Kling 2.0 has better prompt adherence, better movement, larger range of motion, and just overall improvements in quality. They also released a brand new multi-elements feature that allows you to add and subtract elements from video generations. It's pretty cool. We're going to take a look at that in just a second. Now, it wouldn't be an AI video announcement without some people immediately creating cinematic trailers over on X, and we came across a few interesting results. Here is one from Deborah. They basically created this like Mad Max inspired trailer here using Kling generations. You can see that a lot of the physics are just much more dynamic. There's a lot of continuity with the shots, the physical motion from kind of the particulate matter, and a lot of the VFX processes that are happening inside of Kling are just much more advanced compared to previous models. We also have this example from PJ Ace, where he basically said he burned through $1,200 in credits to create this like montage video of people throughout history coming together to tell stories. And you can see that a lot of the dynamics, the camera movements, they really come across as pretty darn realistic. I think PJ has a great eye for curation and allows him to pick and choose the right generations for his projects. And we also came across this comparison from somebody that goes by AI Freak Tools on X, where they compared the old version of Kling to Kling 2.0. And in both of these generations, they prompted in for anger from the character, but you can see the 1.6 version is just kind of sad, not really angry. But the 2.0 version, she definitely seems very angry. Like, it seems like a very dynamic performance from the AI tool. And then finally, we have this generation from Stevie Mac of these goblins breakdancing. And it's a pretty dynamic video. Now, obviously the physics aren't 100% perfect, but I love how the goblins in the background are just like clapping and really getting into it. And his foot kind of kicks up some of the dirt there, which I think is just much more dynamic than a lot of the other AI video generators. It's clearly thinking about what it should generate whenever you are creating the generations. All of these generations are awesome, but let's hop over to Kling to take a look at how to actually use the tool. So the first thing that you need to do is just go over to the Kling website. They have this pop-up box that's going to pop up here. You can just go ahead and exit out of that. So the first thing you need to do is just go to the Kling 2.0 box at the top. We will go ahead and click Experience, which I think is a great call to action button. And like always, you can drag and drop images to animate them. So for our first generation here, I have this image of a car on fire, and we'll go ahead and upload. Now, the cool thing is inside of Kling, you do have the ability to change the generation from 5 seconds to 10 seconds, and you can select the number of outputs you want to generate from 1 to 4. We'll just go ahead and stick with 1 to really stress test it here. And we'll say a wide shot of a car on fire. The car completely explodes. So it starts with a car on fire and then it explodes. That's what we're looking for here. And go ahead and click Generate. So I should note that this generation took 15 minutes. So just keep that in mind when you're comparing it against other tools. So here's our generation from Kling. You can see the car's on fire and it just kind of starts melting in like a Raiders of the Lost Ark style. But lots of dynamics. You have the smoke, you have the fire, you have the sparks, you have the melting metal. Again, it's not the most realistic generation, but in terms of really swinging for the fences, I think that Kling is trying to do the most when it comes to physical generations. Now, of course, I think it's helpful to create a context, so I went ahead and compared Kling to Runway and Google VO2. Let's take a look at those results. This is the result from Runway. You can see the door falls and just like cracks into a million pieces. So not the best result there. And then we have this result from Google VO. Again, the car doesn't really explode, but I would say it's more realistic than Kling. I do think that there's some proportion problems with the flame size, but I think specifically for this shot, VO2 did a better job. The other thing that Kling included inside of the 2.0 launch is a version of elements. So essentially you can take a video and an image and composite certain assets inside of the video. Now, they've had that up to this point, but this version seems even better. Let me show you how to use it. So the first thing you need to know is there's kind of multiple effects that you can use. The first is to swap one asset from one video and replace it with a different asset. The next is adding assets into a video. And the last is simply removing things from a video. So I'm going to go ahead and test the add feature, and let's go ahead and bring in our car on fire from earlier. We'll go ahead and bring that in. And we will also bring in this Viking standing on this cliff edge here. And let's go ahead and crop in so we can really clearly define who our subject is. Go ahead and click confirm. And now you can go in and prompt. You see that by default, it went in and helped you with the prompting, but we do need to go in and adjust it. So we'll say seamlessly add the character from the image into the video and go ahead and click generate. And after a few minutes, it generated this result here, and it did a pretty good job at compositing the character, not a great job. Now, obviously, that is the character in the scene, but in terms of just overall realistic lighting, I think there are just some areas of improvement. You see in the part of him that's kind of facing the car, there's a little bit of the orange glow of the fire, but the lighting of the core character, it seems like he's standing out in sunlight when the shot is clearly at night. So there's some lighting dynamics that I think could be improved here, but pretty awesome that you can just drag and drop different elements together to create shots like this. So after about 15 minutes, we got this result from Kling. You see the camera zooms in, she drinks the coffee. So there are definitely things to like about this generation. Number one, it followed the prompt for zooming in and her drinking coffee, which looks pretty good. And the overall realism is really not bad. Like, it really does look like she's drinking the coffee. There's nothing inherently that feels overly AI with the generation, but it is in slow motion. So that's just one of the problems of working with Kling. It tends to make things in slow motion. So if you're working on a film that should be in real time, it can be a bit tricky. And let's compare that with this generation from Runway. The background elements are kind of wonky. They kind of move at a weird pace. And the amount of steam coming off that coffee cup, I'm very worried about this woman. I think she just completely scalded her mouth. So we need to send her to the hospital very quickly. And then finally, we have this generation from Google VO. Now, the background characters, I don't think there's a lot of continuity. They kind of disappear behind the woman in the pole there. But the overall core movement of the woman as she takes a sip of the coffee and puts it down and looks around, it does seem like it is the most realistic compared to the other two tools. Now, I wanted to do a few other quick experiments using Kling so we can create a context of how this tool might be useful in a film production pipeline. The first is an animated project. So we have this girl with some like animated monsters in the background, and we just want her to talk and look around. So here's the generation from Kling. You can see there's a lot of life in her face. There's weight behind the hair. The characters in the background seem like they're alive, so a pretty good job. This is the result from Runway. I don't know why her face gets so demented, but not the best result. And then finally, here's the result from Google VO. You can see she looks around, she talks to other characters that are there. I think Google VO did a slightly better job with this generation, but it's really, really close. Next up, we have this image of this boy blowing bubbles. Here's the result from Kling. One of the more realistic AI videos I have ever seen, so fantastic job there. And then here's the result from Runway. It doesn't really understand scale. It made those bubbles a little too small. And I'd love to show you the Google VO version of this clip, but the content filters didn't allow us to create the video, so Kling wins by default. Next up, we have this image, just a close-up shot of this woman in a sci-fi film. Here's our generation from Kling. I have no idea what happened. It just created this entirely new scene of this woman running around in a sci-fi world. It's a cool shot, but completely different than what I was looking for. Here's the generation from Runway. You can see the woman looks around. It looks pretty good. I do think that the Runway generation becomes a bit more plasticky as time moves on, and her eyes, the physical movement in her eyes isn't quite realistic. So a decent job from Runway, but not the best. And here's the same shot in Google VO2. And yeah, it basically looks like a realistic shot. And then finally, we're really going to stress test this. We have an army walking off into the distance, tons of flags, tons of movement. Traditionally, this would be very challenging for an AI video tool to generate. Here's the result from Kling. And it looks pretty good. It's funny because the physical movement of the army and the flags look good. It's all the tertiary movement of like the flags randomly just like dissipating, or the weird warping on the left side where the blanket from the horse just turns into smoke. Those are the two things that kind of bring you out. So I imagine that if you negative prompt for no smoke, you probably would get a much better generation. Here's the result from Runway, and it's actually pretty good. It's very, very uniform. So if you are going for that, I suppose this is a pretty good generation. The physical movement of the flags does look good, but it does come across as a bit sterile because there's just not a lot of variancy between the different characters. And then finally, we have this clip from Google VO. And once the characters start moving, I will say it does seem like the most realistic clip, but it took over half of the time to get to the point where they do start moving. So you definitely would have to reprompt in VO. But for this shot, in the way that the tails move, in the way that the flags are flying in the wind, I do think that it has the best results. So now you may be asking, which AI video tool do we recommend at Curious Refuge for AI filmmakers? Now, before I give you that answer, I want to let you know that we have never taken sponsorship money from anyone for reviewing tools, giving them a bump, or anything like that. So I just want to note that before we give you our honest opinion. So when it comes to the best overall AI video generator, it's very close between Google VO2 and Kling 2.0, but I think there's a slight advantage to Kling 2.0. The main reason is there's a ton of other features in the Kling platform that you don't necessarily get inside of VO2. Features like elements or having the ability to set multiple frame keyframes really helps to make Kling 2.0 an incredible tool. Google VO2 is in a close second, and honestly, there will probably be shots that you will use Kling and other shots where you may use VO2. It's all a part of the process. And in third place, I would put Runway. They have a ton of tools, the ability to up-res to 4K, and an unlimited plan, which makes it incredibly helpful for filmmakers. It's just the overall physics and movement of the camera when you use Runway isn't quite as good as the other tools. And speaking of AI video generators, the team at Leonardo came out with Motion 2.0. It's their latest AI video generation tool. Let's take a look at how to use it. So to use Motion 2.0 in Leonardo, just go to the Video tab. And the thing that I want to draw attention to is over on the left side, you have the ability to select different presets. So the overall vibe, lighting, the shot type, color theme, the aspect ratio. You can select all of those things in the sidebar, which makes it pretty cool. We're going to select cinematic for our results here. And let's go ahead and go to the image icon at the top to do a start frame. I always like using image to video because I have more control over the output. And we will select this image of this Viking character looking over a valley. And for our prompt, we'll say a wide shot of a Viking standing on a mountaintop. The camera slowly pulls away, and go ahead and click generate. So here's the result from Motion 2.0. You can see that the motion is actually a little limited and the video clip does seem a bit over sharpened. I should note that this is only in 480p at this time. They haven't released the 720p version. Now let's do a quick comparison using Runway. And here is the result from Runway. You see, it did a much better job at adhering to our prompt. There's more realistic parallaxing, and I think the overall generation just simply looks better. Next up, we have an octopus underwater, and here's the generation from Leonardo. You can see it's okay. Not the best generation, but not that bad. Here's the same result from Runway, and I guess the octopus is asleep, so not the best generation. So Leonardo actually did a better job there. And finally, we have this animated cat. We said he blinks, and it looks like the camera decided to do a close-up and get out of focus for some reason. So kind of a strange direction there. And here's the same thing inside of Runway. You can see the cat, he kind of falls asleep for a second and then wakes up. So neither one of them really adhered to our prompt, but I think that Runway overall created a more realistic generation. In white paper news, we came across a really interesting research paper where they utilized AI to intelligently break down 3D models. That doesn't sound super interesting on the surface, but it has huge implications not only for filmmaking, but also gaming. So using the tool, we can upload this 3D model of this carriage, which is just one model. It's not broken into separate assets, but going through the 3D process, it will actually break it into individual assets. And the thing I should note is it's actually using generative AI to fill in the details between the assets. Here's a quick example from the white papers page. So we have this car from the Flintstones, and this was a single 3D asset. So it wasn't broken up into multiple pieces. They ran it through this AI software, and you can see it actually intelligently breaks it up into multiple pieces. Now, the cool thing is it's actually using AI to fill in the details that normally would be lost whenever they are connected as a 3D asset. So for example, with this axle here, you wouldn't normally have details on the inside because this little asset would be covering up the inside there. But when we begin to separate it, you see it actually filled in the gap. And so it basically goes in and finishes the 3D models to make them completely standalone assets. It's really fun to go to their website and mess around with the examples. So we have this car here. You can see it explodes and separates into different pieces. We have this ice cream shop, and we have obliterated the ice cream shop. And then finally, we have this Viking helmet, and you see it breaks it off into multiple pieces. I think this has big implications not only for filmmaking and the process of creating 3D films, but also for video games. Having the ability to dynamically interact with a physical environment to do everything from destruction to asset creation, it's going to create a more dynamic and holistic experience when you're playing with these 3D games. Going back to AI video generation news, the team at Google has announced that Google Veo 2, the video generator, is now available directly inside of Gemini. All you have to be is a Google Advanced subscriber to type in a prompt and generate your video directly inside of Gemini. And if you're a Google One AI Premium subscriber, you have the ability to upload images and then also generate your video from there. And it's pretty cool because by default, it gives you 8-second video clips rather than just 5. And this announcement really echoes some news from the CEO of Google's DeepMind program, where he basically came out this last week and said that omni models, so that's being directly inside a language model and being able to prompt back and forth, is how Google is thinking about their AI tools. They really envision a master tool that allows you to do multiple things inside a single prompt window. In AI VFX news, we came across a tool this last week that's very interesting, and it looks like it has the ability to really disrupt the compositing industry. The tool is called Beeple, and we actually saw them at NAB 2025, and they're not to be confused with Beeple, who is the wildly successful NFT artist. In a nutshell, Beeple allows you to upload a video asset and relight it and composite it in a background environment. There's a pretty cool example over on this website of this very normal video footage of this guy just sitting in an office. And essentially the tool will rotoscope and create all of the passes that you need for a decent compositing workflow. And then finally, they generated a video clip of the guy sitting inside of the car, and you can see that it did a pretty good job. While I will say it's not the most realistic compositing pipeline, especially if you compare it to workflows that you normally would come across if you're using a high-end software like Nuke, The fact is, this video clip was created by somebody who had never done compositing before just a month ago. So I imagine that as these tools progress, compositing will become just easier and easier for the average creator. Now, of course, I want to show you a quick demo of this tool. So to get started, all you have to do is log on to their website and go ahead and click login. For our example, we're going to go ahead and create a new project. And instead of me uploading footage, I'm just going to use some of their sample footage here. So we'll go ahead and select the middle option here. And you can see that right off the bat, it went in and changed the lighting to look pretty decent. It's not completely realistic, but it did a pretty good job. And I should note that it has all of the VFX passes in here in case you want to take them into a separate application to clean them up. So let's go back over to our 2D result, and let's say that we want to change the environment. So all you have to do is go to the HDRI section, and we can select just some sort of 360 plate here. Let's select this photo studio, and you can see it put her inside of this photo studio. Now, I do think the specular lighting's a little harsh. They have these little icons here where you can dial them in, and I do think we'll need to clip the rotoscope key just a little bit. Seems a little gray around the edges, but really not that bad. And what's pretty cool is you have the ability to rotate the environment. So we can just rotate the camera around and it will intelligently try to understand where the lighting should be. So it's pretty wild. Now let's try a different result here. So I selected the sunset preset here. I'm gonna turn down the intensity just a little bit because it's a little harsh, and you can see we can turn and rotate the subject, and it understands that she should be more silhouetted now, and the camera would not have as much dynamic range. So it really intelligently understands. I think tools like this are probably going to have a hand in the next evolution of virtual production. Instead of renting an incredibly expensive soundstage, you can probably use post-processing tools like this to relight and composite your characters into your scene. Going back to research news, a team from China has released code for a new tool that basically allows you to upload audio and animate a character's face. Now, that's not a new feature. What makes this really unique is the overall realism, and then also how long the generations can be. It can generate a video clip that's up to 10 minutes long. Now, there's some pretty cool examples over on the white paper page. Let's take a look at Albert Einstein here.
Emotions. It would be empty. What would our lives be like without emotions? They would be empty of values.
So you can see it did a pretty good job, and the irony of what he's saying in relation to what was generated is not lost on me. Now, we also have an example of someone singing, and again, this song is 9 minutes long. Let's take a quick listen. And you can see what makes this also interesting is it doesn't just animate the face, it also understands the physics of the hair and the overall body of the character. And here's a quick comparison with some of the other AI video tools that do something similar. Sonic, which is this white paper, is over in the far right corner.
我都1年没吃苹果了，到超市偷了一袋苹果，大家觉得这要不要道歉？
So as you can see, there's a lot of dynamic performance in this generator. So the cool thing is you actually have the ability to download this code. Just go over to the white paper website and you can play around with it yourself. There are a ton of AI film events popping up around the world. Here's a few that I think you should know about. There's a new Gen Jam from Machine Cinema out in Los Angeles on April 23rd. The Curious Refuge community is hosting a Paris meetup on May 7th. There's also going to be some Curious Refuge team members at the Cannes International Film Festival on May 15th. So if you're at that event, be sure to look for us at Cannes Next. And then finally, submissions are open for the Reply AI Film Festival. If you've created any AI short film, whether it's for our competitions or for other competitions in the industry, be sure to submit them to this event. The finalists will be flown out to the Venice International Film Festival. We would love to meet you at the event. Thank you so much for watching this episode of AI Film News. As always, be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. It helps the channel a lot, and you'll be the first to know when a new tutorial or news episode drops. Again, thank you so much for watching. Best of luck with your generations. We'll see you next time.